Hello and welcome to another episode of Monday Beagle. I'm your host, Michał Jackowski, and today I'm delighted to welcome a truly fascinating guest, Professor Kamil Mamak, a prominent researcher and expert on the intersection between artificial intelligence, ethics, and criminal law. Kamil is a professor of Jagiellonian University and previously conducted research at University of Helsinki. He has authored several influential publications. We may mention AI Personhood, Criminal Law and Punishment, recently published by Oxford Intersection of AI in Society series. A book, Robotics, AI and Criminal Law, Crimes Against Robots. And for instance, AGI crimes, the role of criminal law in mitigating existential risks posed by artificial general intelligence. His research profoundly explores whether and how AI entities could be integrated into existing criminal law framework, both as potential perpetrators and victims, and ethical implications of treating AI as subject of the law, especially criminal law. Kamil, welcome to Monday Beagle. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you for nice introduction and for invitation.
In your recent publications, you explore AI's role in the criminal justice system. Could you briefly outline where AI is currently being integrated into criminal justice and what new challenges does this integration create? Is it at all?
Yeah, so like AI is omnipresent everywhere. Like everywhere, we could like find the impact of AI on something. So it's a similar case in the criminal justice system as a whole. So we could like look at it from very different perspectives. So like for example, that the criminals using AI for committing crimes, the new crimes are possible to commit. But on the other side, there is also like the police could use it, and we are discussing whether like judges could use it to make some decision during the criminal proceedings. So there is different perspective in which we could look at this issue on the ground of the on the criminal law. But I'm like not focusing on every aspect of AI that is impacting criminal law, but I'm focusing on some specific things connected with the like personhood, moral status of AIs and robots.
Okay, it's intriguing because AI and criminal law sounds like something really opposite so far, and you notice some places where it is really integrated and in practice impacting criminal law. So you mentioned you write extensively about legal personhood of AI. I had interviewed David Gunkel previously, and we discussed it a bit. So, what's your opinion? Under what conditions or criteria could AI realistically be recognized as legal subject under criminal law?
Mhm. So there are like different perspectives on which under which we could look at it. So one, if you would like ask question whether the robots or AIs could be like the perpetrators of crime, like could be moral agents using the moral philosophy apparatus. Uh, and we also could look at it like whether the robots could be somehow protected by the criminal law, so be moral patients. This is also the term from the moral philosophy. So there are different conditions that needs to be met by AIs and robots to be considered as one of those subjects under criminal law. So I think that the lowest bar is for the robots to be moral patients, so be somehow uh, beings that are we care about to that extent that we like provide them kind of protection under the criminal law. And recently, there is a lot of discussion about whether the robots and AIs could be conscious, could be sentient. Uh, there are like discussion how we should do, what does it mean, or what we should do about that. So one of the part of the discussion is whether how law should react, and the protection in the realm of law is sometimes also in the criminal law. So we have like crimes that forbid us, like humans, for doing some certain things. I'm discussing these kind of events, which kind of behaviors performed on AIs, on robots could be forbidden from different reasons.
It's interesting. So how can AI be punished, for instance, in an ethically justified way? We know corporations being punished.
Mhm.
Maybe it's something similar because punishment for AI looks like not very traditional form of punishment, meaningful to humans, but also to non-human entities. Can you elaborate a bit?
So yeah, previously I talked about the robots and AIs as a moral patient. So the beings that we care about are not like responsible for their actions, but we are like protecting them somehow. Your question is like concern about more about robots and AIs as a moral agent. So those entities that could be responsible for their actions. So the problem with the criminal law and AI is that on the basis of the criminal law is a concept of blame. And we in the moral philosophy are saying that the blame could be only ascribed to the moral agents. So the entity that could have some characteristic that allow this entity to be considered as a blame for the actions and under criminal law like punished for that actions. So this bar is set very high. So some people who are discussing moral agency are saying that the robots will never be moral agents, could never be punished in the result of that claim. Some like think that it's at least theoretically possible. And in my paper that you are referring to, I was asked to write under which conditions the AIs and robots could be persons as a like perpetrators. So there are different conditions like to be punished, like there is to be possibility of feeling pain, so the entities needs to be sentient somehow, but it's not enough. So for example, kids like for example could like feel pain, but we are not punishing them because they could not like understand what does it mean and why we are imposing that. So the person or that person could be granted only for from that perspective to the entity that could like comprehend it somehow, so understand what does it mean and could like change their behavior after that impositions. But it's also still not enough for imposing punishment on that entity. The third condition is related to the morally justified punishment. So we could like impose pain on humans in many different ways, but in some legal systems at least we limit these possibilities. Like in most countries in Europe, we are not using corporal punishments. The corporal punishments are used in other places in the world, but at least in Europe we are not using it, and we using like some moral argument against that. That is morally unacceptable to cause some physical pain to people as a punishment. So going back to AIs and robots, if we will have like entity that could feel pain, could comprehend it, then we need to like think about what kind of pain is justified to impose or ethically possible. And I don't feel like super comfortable about talking about the ways in which we could like punish the robots. I'm thinking more about like theoretical possibility that what kind of conditions need to be met, but how to transfer into the real like punishment is like the other kind of stuff, because we need to first know what kind of like entities those what kind of qualities those entities have and what they care about, what they fear about, what causes them pain, and we could only build our response on that knowledge, not first.
Okay, we could more easily imagine AI being a victim. You mentioned a bit this concept of AI protected by criminal law, but can you also elaborate a bit on it? Because it's also interesting. Is it protection similar to, I don't know, corporations or some other types of agents that we try to protect with criminal law, or is it some other concept?
Mm-hmm. So I think the most common like view on that is that the protection of the entity is deserved only if that entity have some ontological qualities. And usually in that context, the possibility of feeling pain is discussed. So if the entity is sentient, we know that they is sentient, then we think that it's not morally acceptable to cause like the unnecessary pain to that entity, and the person who is causing that unnecessary pain is doing something morally wrong, and also this kind of thing could be criminalized, and in the result that entity is protected under criminal law. So the criminal law like protects not only moral agents, but also like moral patients. Like I mentioned, small kids that could not be responsible for their actions, but they are protected under criminal law. But there are also other entities that are like protected. In many legal systems, animals are protected by the criminal law. It's not like super coherent because we are still, we as a society, eating animals, killing them for food, but at the same time, like causing some unnecessary suffering to animals could be considered as a criminal action and be considered as a crime. So in that perspective, we could say that if the robots and the AIs could feel something, then they could be protected in the similar way as animals. But in the literature about AI ethics, there are many different rationale. You mentioned like, and you have a guest, David Gunkel, who was here before. He's like a proponent of some alternative view on this topic. So he is like a representative of some like ethics, like the rational turn. So he based his views on not on the ontological qualities of the entities, but on the relation that humans could develop with the entities. So he claims that we could have moral patients and morally protected entities based on the relation that they could develop. So the other representative of that view is, for example, Mark Koppelberg. In his papers, giving example like that kid has some relationship with robot in the sense that the human being have a connection with the robot, then this like the robot should be protected not because of the qualities of the robot, but because of the nature of the relation between humans and that robots. In my works, I'm not focusing on the ontology, I'm focusing on the phenomenology of the relation with robots. So I think that in different social contexts, different like values could be endangered by the acts performed on robots. I'm focusing on different values that could be protected. For example, I have a paper about like the public violence against robots, and I'm saying that in we should it could be like forbidden to show violence against robots publicly, not because of the robots, but maybe that act is against public morality. So it's connected or similar to the actions that are like okay, but performed privately, but if performed publicly, they are forbidden. Like for example, littering, you could have mess in your room, but if you are doing it publicly, then the context change. The same with the drinking alcohol. In many countries in the world, publicly drinking alcohol is forbidden, but drinking privately is okay. The context change. So I thought that similar justification we could use for robots. Performing some violence against robots could be banned because of that. And in the result, we could say that the robots are kind of protected, but only in that specific context. The other example that I'm using is love-like relationship. I'm not claiming, I'm agnostic about whether the robots would have like real love with humans or not, but I'm saying that if humans feel that way, that it's something important, and we in the law and in the morality are considering like the love as one of the qualitatively important relationship that humans have. And I think that this should be protected in the sense that we should protect um, love-like relationships with robots and like AI agents, not because of the robots, but because of the humans who feel that they are in that kind of relationship. So in other words, I don't care about robots that much, but what they represent in some contexts.
So these ideas open up profound ethical and philosophical questions, challenging traditional notions of criminal sanctions. But do you envision criminal law evolving in response to these challenges? Practically, do you foresee any reforms of criminal law in this way, or it's just purely theory right now?
In my papers, usually I'm ending up with proposing some crimes that I believe should be considered to implement in the legal systems. I'm not like, using those examples of the laws as already things that could be implemented to the law, but I'm using it more like the beginning of the discussion, some invitation for the discussion to critically evaluate these provisions that could be implemented into the law. So I think that there should be like the changes in the law in the protection of robots and AI somehow. But now I'm working on something like bigger in the sense that I was like avoiding touching this problem so far. It was like the problem of the responsibility. Recently, I started my ERC grant on that topic. So now I think that we need to like rethink the criminal law to accommodate robots and AI into that, to change like its philosophical foundation I want to propose some new ideas of criminal law that could like be coherent with the problems that are caused by the AIs and robots.
Okay, that's really interesting. Before you mentioned some concepts about robots and AI, their personhood, legal status. David Gunkel, who was here, also presented it. He writes about concept of a slave, autonomous agent, compares it to corporations. So what's your personal view on robots' rights and personhood? Which view you are the closest to?
So one thing is that you ask whether there is already some analogy that we could use to robots.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like common view that there is everything was already like discussed in the law, so we need to just like find the right analogy and then use it and work on that to 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 apply to the new problems that arise. I personally believe that maybe there is no good analogy, and all of the analogy that are already used, I think that somehow dead end. Like we could not work on it. So this is why I think that we need to rethink the philosophical like foundation of the criminal law to change it drastically. I'm not like looking for any analogy. I think that we need to create new apparatus for that. You mentioned David Gunkel and his views. I'm very sympathetic to his position, his relational turn. I think that there is a lot of common in his position and my position. I think at the end the result will be the same, but I think that there is theoretical differences. Like he's focusing more on the moral status of the robots. I think that we could like introduce some changes in which humans should treat robots, but not for the sake of robots. And I'm not that you could like implement a series of changes in the law in which the robots will be protected and still don't believe that the robots are moral patients at all. So I think what is like more theoretical differences than like the practical one.
Okay, so you are a supporter of robots being a new category of subjects of criminal law, not invented yet so far.
Mm, yes, I think that, but I see the limitation of the current analogies that are used, and I think that we should not be like stopped by those analogies, and instead we should think about new ideas and then work on that. So this is my approach.
Okay, so I will ask you later on about it yet, but you also write about artificial general intelligence, and any new model is open published. The discussion about general intelligence is started. We discuss whether, I don't know, GPT-5 is already AGI or is new DeepSeek model an AGI. So I would like to ask, do you know or do you feel or assume where we are on the way to AGI?
Mhm.
And you write also about criminal responsibility for AGI. So what's the difference between criminal responsibility of AI, robots, and AGI?
Maybe I will start with something like different. So I was working on different topics before I started to work on AI and the robots. And I think what's fascinating in that topic is that you see a lot of gap in the literature, and even the biggest expert could be like completely maybe not wrong, but they could contradict each other. So they are like experts who are saying that AGI is soon, the others are saying that the AGI will never happen. And this is kind of like fascinating for me that maybe it's frustrating for people who are listening to it, but if you are working on that from the as an academic, it means that there is a lot of things to do. So I'm not like the expert in the AI in the sense that I could like say what kind of qualities that you have in the near future. So I'm agnostic about whether there will be AGI soon or not. But I think that if the expert are some at least some of the prominent experts are saying that there is like possibility of AGI happen in the near future, and the other people who are saying that if it will happen then it will cause like the existential threat to humanity, I think we should like at least theoretically to treat it like seriously as a possibility. So I'm not saying that it's like for sure it will happen, but if the experts are saying that it could happen and it could have some very negative consequences that usually are under the radar of the criminal law, then we should like think about it and try to like contribute to to prevent or like mitigate the risks that are like identified. So my paper that you are referring to, I'm like trying to show something different that was already presented in the literature about that, because usually when we think about the AGI and how we could prevent it, like the discussion like starts with how like the international law should be involved in that, because it's considered as a threat to the whole humanity. So it's not like stop on the boundaries of specific countries. So people believe, I think they are right, I mean, mostly, that this is the problem for the whole humanity to solve and to prevent and to mitigate. But in my paper, I'm showing something different. I'm showing that some impulse to the change in the way in which we should like deal with this problem could be started in the national criminal laws. And I'm saying I'm using different arguments why the national criminal laws could be good starting point for like changing the way in which the development in this sphere is conducted. So I'm saying that this like the criminal law in countries is usually like the easier to introduce, the fastest way. Like we are discussing, even within the European Union, some new laws that could be like enacted, it takes like the years, if not like decades. But within the national legal systems, the changes could be like almost sometimes for bad, but very fast. So we could take like the weeks, months to introduce some law. I thought that if the risk related to uncontrollable artificial intelligence are so high, maybe we should like start with enacting some crimes in the national law that could start kind of Brussels effect, in the sense that they will change the way in which the research about that are conducted all around the world. So I propose in that paper some like crimes that aim to prevent establishment or like invention of uncontrollable artificial general intelligence. So I like this historical paper with like some proposition in that. I think that we could like start with discussion about mitigating those risks with changing the national criminal laws. So this is the idea of this paper.
So, are you an advocate for prohibition of AGI in a way, or just AGI that it's not accountable, or what's your view on development or reaching AGI?
One of the biggest characteristic of AGI that is considered as problematic is so-called control problem. So that we could not control AGI. So I think that if we are building something like that, we should put a lot of effort to make sure that it will be controllable. So my crime is to prevention of creating not artificial general intelligence as a such, but uncontrollable artificial general intelligence. So I'm focusing only on this aspect, like lack of the control. I think that criminal provision that I'm proposing in this paper should like change the way in which the development is done, that people who are working on that should be more careful about this aspect of AGI.
Okay, it seems quite futuristic, but considering the pace of development, these proactive discussions are really essential for mitigating and anticipating the risks. But coming back more to the ground, so finally, maybe you could give some recommendations for policymakers today who are tasked with preparing criminal law systems for increasingly intelligent and autonomous AI.
Mhm. So I think that we do not need to wait for some big changes like AGI or sentient robots to introduce some changes into the law. Like I see the criminal law as a tool that is meant at least partially to protect citizens and their like vital interests. So if the reality changes and if the AI has a lot of impact on that and people like developing some relationship with robots, we could like act if this change. We don't need to like wait for some big thing that could happen in the futuristic scenarios, but the changes could be done faster. So this is why I sometimes prepare propositions of the new provisions. So I think that lawgivers should be more proactive in looking for what is happening on the ground, how this AI is impacting humans, and what maybe should be like protected, or how should we change the law to remain its coherence.
So if you were Polish parliament or lawmaker, what would be the first one in this field you think is most necessary and useful for the society?
Not necessarily related with the AI and robots, but related with the other like aspect of technologies, which are the disinformation and fake news. I see that the impact of the medical fake news is a real danger and is causing real death among the people who are not like vaccinating their children. And I had that idea a couple of years before, that maybe medical information should be protected, especially in the web, and dissemination of those like medical fake
Mm-hmm.
news should be under the radar of the criminal law. So this is, I think this is like you ask what would be my first things to change. So I would focus on that and then change to the robots. But I think that the fake news
Okay.
are also like very important and also partially related to AI and the criminal. But we have not discussed about this aspect anymore.
Yeah, fake
Hmm?
news are often discussed and connected with AI because many European laws implementing AI Act are partly implementing also rules on deep fakes. I know that Italian authorities try to implement it during implementation of national implementation of AI Act. Kamil, it's great you could join me today. Thank you for very interesting advices, insights about robots, AI personhood, status, and also sharing insights from your excellent papers and book. I will link it in description of the film. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for conversation.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining today's engaging discussion with Kamil Mamak. I highly recommend exploring his works, and be sure to subscribe, comment, discuss what we discussed and talked about, and follow Monday Bible for more conversation about AI and law. Thank you.